All right, welcome to the latest edition of Data in the Hallway. My name is Ray Pate, Community Manager at PingCAP, and joined by Daniel, my co-host, and he's on the road this week and joining us from Bristol, UK. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good,
Good.
thanks.
So, yeah, we're recording this like a few days before Christmas, so I'm sure like the airports are pretty crowded. So hopefully we'll continue to have safe travels. And we're joined by our colleague, Nabil Nawaz. He's a principal solution engineer at PingCAP. He's joining us from Dallas, Texas. And I was like, I think I was talking about this like a few days ago with you, Nabil. Uh, you know, I mean, PingCAP as a company and TiDB as a project, we've been around for like 8 years, 8+ years, but we started the US and European operations only maybe a couple of years ago. So it's rare to find people who's been with the company longer than 6 months. And I think you just had your first anniversary back in September or shortly before that, right? So,
Yeah. I just joined about a year ago. Actually, I
right.
joined on October 31st on Halloween,
Wow, cool.
right before our
Wow,
very first
cool.
HTAP conference. Yeah.
Right.
So
So you're one of the wily veterans in North America. So it's good to have you. Yeah, I mean, now that I briefly introduced you, I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, we wanted to talk to you because obviously you spend a lot of time with customers, not just at PingCap, but you've been doing this for like 25+ years. So tell us about your background and then even how you came to work at PingCap. So.
sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Ray and Daniel, for this opportunity. Looking forward to speaking with our audience today and sharing my background. So I was born in Dallas, Texas, and I did a degree in computer science. And I got really interested in databases during my computer science career, learning about programming and started learning about the Oracle database in the late 90s. So I was fortunate to get a job as an Oracle DBA right out of college. So I joined a company called a telecom company called Northern Telecom. And I joined their global DBA team, and I pretty much started from the ground up, learning the basics about managing and creating a database, learning how to back up, how to tune it, how to design databases. It was a really nice experience working with the global team and working on many pretty mission critical applications. Back then in the late 90s, one of the projects that was really a lot of IT people from a programming and a database perspective were working on was Y2K. Y2K was the big thing, making sure all of your applications and databases would be compatible to handle converting from the late 90s into the year 2000. So that was a really good experience. And then after that, I continued progressing my career. I worked as a consultant. I started working on more advanced technologies with the Oracle database. And later on in my career, I became an Oracle ace, meaning that I would help publish blogs and do speaking events and just talking and sharing, working at presenting at meetups and sharing my information that I've learned as far as best practices go in my Oracle career. And then later on, I got to have an opportunity to write a book on Oracle Exadata. I became pretty good with Oracle Exadata, which is Oracle's flagship engineered system technology to run Oracle RAC on premises or in the cloud. So I got to be part of a team to help write that book several years ago. And then after that, fast forward, I started working for SingleStore, a MySQL compatible database in the commercial industry. And obviously Oracle was as well. And then finally, in the past year, I had the opportunity to join my first open source company, PingCAP, working with the distributed MySQL compatible database technology called TiDB, which is on my t-shirt. So I've had the opportunity to work as a DBA and as a consultant, architect, and then finally in the last, I would say, decade or so, I've been working with as a pre-sales engineer, helping customers understand the technology that we're selling and finding value and how it can help run their mission critical applications running on a distributed database such as TiDB. So I'm very happy to be here, part of this team and working with all you guys.
Wow. So a lot of good experience in Oracle and relational databases in general. So is this your first is PingCAP the first company where first like an open source company that you work for? Like I'm not as familiar with SingleStore, so just wanted to ask. But
Yeah,
yeah.
it actually it is. I've known a lot about open source technology. I think all of us are familiar with open source technology as far as software that's readily available from an application perspective. But from a
Mhm.
database perspective, this is pretty much my first experience because most it's like we were just talking the other day, when if you guys have ever seen the movie The Matrix, where Neo, he's just living his life, right? And day-to-day life, and then finally towards the end of the movie and the climatic moment where he comes back to, he's shot down and then he comes back to
Mhm.
life and then he sees the reality of the Matrix. It's like a whole new eye-opening experience for
Mhm.
him. And I kind of felt like that when
Mhm.
I joined here to be able to understand the whole world and community of open source technology and
Mhm.
distributed database technology. It just really opens up your eyes to another world. And a lot of companies are actually looking to open source technology now,
Mhm.
so to
Right.
run their businesses.
Cool. I mean, was there like I mean this is a bit of a funny question, but was there an adjustment period because you're, you know, I mean, working in like an open source database company, was there in terms of like the culture or technology, like what kind of adjustments, if
Now,
any, did you have to go through? Yeah.
that's a very good question. Very good question. In one of my first meetups, I was here with my team and with my
Yeah.
boss. It was very funny. I was dressed up in a dress shirt, business jacket,
Oh, okay.
and I was presenting just like I would be at an Oracle conference or an Oracle
Right.
meetup, dressed up looking like a salesperson.
Mm,
And it was funny. I had a conversation with my boss afterwards, and he said, "Dude, look, we're in the open source. We're working with
mhm,
people who are working with open source. People are more casual, dressed down. It's a different
mm,
type of mindset, and it's a different generation. So I realized it's more of a casual and laid back type of culture than the
right,
commercial database world. So
right.
I've come to appreciate that. And even, people in our company, just day to day, and even in our conferences or when we go out for conferences and even meeting customer meetings, everybody's pretty laid back wearing a t-shirt and jeans. So
Mhm,
it's a big, it's a change. Yeah. So,
right. Cool,
which I
cool.
like, which I really do like. So.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I've heard that from other folks too. Like, is it especially people like in business and marketing background when they go to open source conferences, like they realize they have to sort of dress differently to blend in with other folks. So cool. Um, so I mean, you I mean, talk to a lot of our customers and even prospects all the time, and you probably spend more time at airports and hotels than you like to admit. But I mean, what are when you talk to customers over the past year or so, what are the most frequently asked questions, or what are the big challenges that people want to talk to you about?
So some big chat, that's a good
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Many customers, they are running third-party applications and they're
mhm,
locked in that because these third-party applications can only use certain specific database platforms, such as I may have an application like the Business Suite or PeopleSoft or various types of third-party enterprise applications that are out there. They only work with commercial database technologies such as Oracle, DB2, or Microsoft. I would say these are the big three. They've been around for
mhm,
over 20, 30, 40 years, this technology. And just being locked into that is quite a challenge for them. And I would say nowadays, over the last, I would say, decade, a lot of companies are developing their own homegrown custom applications or purchasing applications that can work with a variety of different databases. It's not locked in, right? So they're looking to go to like an open source database technology that's very flexible in the way it can work with applications and certified with applications. Because I think those days now it's very cost prohibitive, and that's one of the things that's driving the customers is they're having to be logged in, and then they're paying a very high license fee for their
Hmm.
application and database. And sometimes these companies, unfortunately, get even audited.
Hmm.
If you're using a feature, believe it or not, if you're using one single feature that you're not licensed for, because if you've tried it out, they have the ability legally to even audit you, and which is really challenging because it's a big
Hmm.
penalty if you are not, compliant. And it's just by accident, right? It's just by
Hmm.
accident. They just tried out some features to try out. So I think, people are looking for an alternative. A lot of companies now, we just had an HCAP conference, which I think this is pretty cool, where companies like LinkedIn have said they have actually, from the leadership perspective, down, and from company perspective, they're actually looking to drive and work with or database, open source database technology and open source applications, because there is an alternative out there. You don't have to be locked in to a
Hmm.
commercial database or application technology to run your business. More and more companies are looking for that alternative because of all these reasons I just mentioned.
Right, right. Cool. I mean, over like if you look back like the past, let's say like in 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of different hype cycles over different topics. Like, 10 years ago was maybe the cloud, and then people started talking about DevOps, and now it's all about AI, large language models, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, going through those sort of hype cycles, did the conversation with customers really change, or uh, you know, if you drill down to it, it's just core issues that you're still dealing with. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
I think, especially nowadays, and even since the beginning, there's
Hmm.
same challenges have been there since the beginning, and people are facing these things today, such as with scaling, meaning
Hmm.
how do you grow your database platform to
Hmm.
handle database growth, database performance requirements, more concurrent users coming in, more workloads coming in, handling that growth and making sure you deliver a high level of performance consistently for your applications,
Hmm.
for your user, for your business SLAs. And another one is security. Security is very, very important. There's always new it's unfortunate, but there's always new attacks coming all the time from
Hmm.
hackers and different types of attacks. And we constantly have to make sure end to end, from connectivity perspective, from the storage perspective, from within the database perspective, the roles and the users and privileges, end to end, the database is always secure, and we're always
Hmm.
adapting to the new attacks and new changes that are happening out there from security. So, all of these things are very, very important. And I think as database technology evolves, we are trying to come up with automation,
Hmm.
basically to be able to help automate how do we handle a growing auto-scaling database, how to handle automatically tuning your database platform and automatically doing security patches and making sure your database is robust. I think we will get to that utopia, but it's going
Hmm.
to be still another, I would say, another 5 to 10 years, maybe. Some database technologies they have released, like Oracle has released this autonomous database product, which is very, very good. And in the open source database arena, I think the race is still on for
Mhm.
this,
Right.
and we have an opportunity to do really well in these areas, to be able to handle all of these different challenges for users. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
Uh, Go ahead, Daniel. Like,
yeah.
I also think that it's interesting to see some of the so-called hypes with, like, for example, NoSQL, where like people all jumped to the NoSQL databases. Then all databases got better with working with JSON, for example. And then people are like, well, maybe SQL is actually quite useful. And even things like Elasticsearch are adding SQL functionality to their platform. So I think it's interesting to see that SQL is not going away anytime soon.
right. No, I mean,
I,
I think
I
that's,
totally
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, that's actually a good point because, uh, I mean, it's great to see advent of different like approaches to database. Like, I mean, if we want to put it that way, but that made it a lot more complex, right? Because you're dealing with, because I don't think I'm exaggerating. if I talk to community members, I mean, no company is just using one or even two databases, right? They got like, different departments and different teams that have hodgepodge of different databases. And I think that makes the environment a lot more complex. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. So, when you like talk to customers about TiDB or prospects, like, you know, what are they most surprised about? I mean, this could be in terms of feature perspective, technology, or it could be about uh, non-tech anything non-technical related. But
Yeah, great question. I
yeah.
recently we just released a new version of TiDB version 7.5 LTS.
Mhm.
It's long-term support release.
Right.
And some of the things I thought that stood out to me would be useful for customers are MySQL has been around, for example, many years. And prior to 7.5, in our long-term support release 7.1, we were MySQL 5.7 compatible. But with the new release of TiDB 7.5, we are MySQL 8.0 wire compatible. So this is really nice because if people are using applications or using something that requires MySQL 8.0 compatibility or wire compatibility, it's an option to look at and try and test to see if that would work. And most likely you should not have any issues because it is MySQL 8.0 wire compatible. Another thing that's really cool from a Kubernetes perspective, if a customer is running a self-managed environment for TiDB, they have the ability to do some level of auto scaling, which
Mhm.
handles one of the challenges we were talking about. Like if you need to grow your platform by adding more nodes to handle more, to provide the cluster more CPU, memory, and storage based on workload requirements, that capability is now in there. And our documentation goes into detail on how to set up and configure the auto scaling in Kubernetes if you're self-managing your cluster. And then finally, I think it's a pretty cool topic, which I presented at our HTAP conference, is in our cloud service, we have our serverless tier. We have dedicated as well, where I can go ahead and just explain it real quick, where you define your specific sizing for CPU, memory, and storage, and the number of nodes, et cetera, you need. And that's really
Mhm.
nice if you can predict and you understand what you're going to have. Whereas in the serverless tier, which is really nice, we talked about the auto scaling, right? So based on your workload requirements, the database will automatically scale your hardware resources, such as your memories, compute, and storage requirements as your database needs it in real time on demand. So this is
Mhm.
really cool. This has just been released recently in production this past summer, and more and
Right.
more customers are adopting it for their database workloads. And
Mhm.
I think you just did a podcast with Arun, our PM, on the data service, which also
Yep.
recently came out. And yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty much the future now. Imagine just being able to run your application, connect to a service for a database,
Mhm.
and you don't have to worry about performance, scaling, security, all of the above. It just works out of the box to
Right.
run your relational database platform. And then on top of that, I'll add a cherry on top to Daniel's point. Yes, SQL's not going away. And our CEO,
Mhm.
Max, recently went to a conference and he said that, oh, I'm beginning to forget about how to write SQL statements. And he
Mhm.
was just joking because we have integration with OpenAI technology to be
Right.
able to run on your serverless tier. You
Mhm.
can write sentences in English and it'll
Right.
ask the database questions about give me information about X, Y, and Z, and it'll automatically take your English statement and convert it into a SQL statement on the fly, which is
Mhm.
really
Yeah,
nice. So
and it
yeah, go
doesn't
ahead.
even have to. It doesn't even have to be English. I just tried it recently. If you like ask questions in like Dutch or German, it also works.
Oh wow.
That's cool.
Multilingual. So cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we had a yeah. I mean, we not a. I know we did have an episode about OSS Insight. I mean, it's a good demo platform for our cloud and serverless capabilities, right? And there, one of the criticisms. I mean, there are a lot of like projects out there that have created open source community metrics dashboards, but there you have to know the internals of like either the database or like you have to know the right API calls to make to GitHub. but OSS Inside, I was able to just type something in English. Like in this project, like how many of the like a PRs had this label, and then it was just in like a plain English. I mean, I guess you have to know GitHub to a certain extent because you need to sort of tease out the right labels, but still, I didn't have to write anything like anything like code, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, cool. And then I think you mentioned this early on about a lot of our recent customers and prospects, especially in the US, talking about open source. Like, how did the conversation go? Like, do people like what kind of questions do they ask about the community or how we govern our open source project? Like,
Yeah, great question. A lot of customers are interested in that process, and some of them are just new to it, like I was, and
mhm,
they have never worked with open source community before.
mhm,
Um, I will go ahead and tell you a couple of stories where we were talking the other day about a couple of customer prospects that actually came to us because they were involved with the commercial database technology like Oracle for a long, long time. And recently, from their leadership, they were recommended to start looking at open source database technology. And a couple of prospects that I spoke to this year, they actually, through the Slack community, and the open source community, which you manage, Ray, they
mhm,
were able to come across, learn about TiDB,
mhm.
and they joined our Slack community, which you can talk about more. And they
Yeah.
started asking questions and just learning about how this relational database distributed technology works.
Mhm,
And they really were surprised by the open source community, how the code is available on GitHub. They learned about OSS Insights, one of our cool projects that we run, and being able to help contribute to the roadmap in the future of our product. I mean, they feel like they have a voice. They're part of the community, right? To be able to
mhm.
help contribute and make it a better product. I
Right.
think there's a lot of benefits the open source community provides customers and users alike. So
Yeah. No, I mean, like couple of like some of your like a sales colleagues have pinged me, reached out to me, like things like, can you share this metrics about the community, like how many, contributions, contributors over the past X numbers of years or so. I mean, that's where OSS Insight actually helps me do my job, but they were actually curious, like, because I mean, I think some companies use open source as almost like a marketing tool, but if
mm,
you really want to look at in terms of, what's the health of the community like? Are there actually people outside the company contributing? So, I mean, obviously, are your sales colleagues are getting those types of questions because they want to know, like, is this a legitimate, open source project? And this happened in my previous job at GitLab. I was actually in a couple of sales calls because they wanted me to walk through what's the process when somebody from outside the company contribute, and how does it get triaged,
mhm,
who reviews them. So I sort of had to work through a couple of I mean, at GitLab we call them merge requests versus pull
mhm,
requests. Like I had to go through a couple of merge request examples, and this is how first of all I triaged it, how the labels were automatically added because it came from outside the company, and the whole review process. So yeah, some customers get really serious in terms of yeah, we realize I see your code on GitHub or GitLab repo, but how does it really work under the hood in terms of contribution process? So yeah, I think some customers I mean, open source is one of the key criterias, right? I think even some of our customers says when they look for a technology, not just database, the open source is one of the check marks. I think they prioritize open source solutions first, and then if there are no options, then you can go look at something proprietary. But that's pretty interesting in terms of how a lot of technology companies are like approaching things these days.
yeah, 20
So
years ago, 10 years ago, I don't think
yeah,
most companies would even consider open source to run their critical business and database applications that they have
right.
now. But now, recently, I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, or even more recently now, more companies are looking at open source as a first choice to look at.
Mhm. Right.
And they're very happy with how robust, secure, how affordable it is, and easy to use.
Right.
Um, it's a great choice now. I think that people are looking
Right.
at a great alternative.
Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, really appreciate your time, Nabil. A couple more questions,
Sure.
a little bit more lighthearted. So, I can't like not like ask these questions for people that are working a lot with customers. I mean, this actually goes to both of you. But Nabil, I mean, do you have any like a favorite war stories that you like to share? You know, whether it's through like implementation phase or even during the sales phase. I'm sure you have quite a few that you tell people
Yes,
over
yes.
drinks. But
There's one that's been common for, I would say, for my pretty much my whole 26-year career.
mm,
Anytime a customer goes into doing an upgrade of, for example, their database or application,
hmm
or technology stack, or they're not only an upgrade, but a brand new implementation,
hmm
it seems like, from my experience, that they're running something in production after they go live, a workload, and there's like, this is not working, or it's failing, or
hmm
it's not performing right. And a lot of times, believe it or not, it comes down to that they didn't do the proper testing, thorough testing
hmm
beforehand.
hmm
So it's very, in my personal opinion, it's very important to do thorough testing. I like to use the word, I like to test the living daylights out of the platform end to end,
Right.
because ideally you want to do all the testing beforehand, do all the hard work and practice beforehand before you actually go live. That
hmm
way, when you actually go live, running your database or your application for the users and running the actual platform in production, you want to make sure you don't have any surprises, and very important to do the thorough testing. And one more important point I like to have, I mentioned, is for production and non-production environments, ideally, if you have a very critical application in terms of functionality and performance and data volume, it's very important to have a system that's like to like, meaning
hmm
that you want to make sure you have the same number of nodes, same number of vCPUs, memory, and storage. I understand some customers have concerns about cost and they don't have the same volume, but if you really want to mimic your production environment to a non-prod environment, it's very important to have a like-to-like system as closely as possible, because
hmm
nobody wants to be ending up in a surprise situation, right? So if
Right.
you can invest into those types of things, it's very good in terms of the thorough testing and having the like-to-like environments. I would say that from my 2 cents perspective.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's even before you answered, I was going to guess either uh, like upgrade or migration. Like that typically trips a lot of people, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's probably one of the things that hasn't changed. But uh, go ahead, Daniel. But
Yeah, I think it's also a very good way to get more hands-on experience with the product. And people should not be only testing like the happy scenarios, like make sure the product fails,
right,
take down a few servers, see how it recovers, because
right,
it's better to do that like in a testing phase than to do that or have that happen in production and then suddenly have to figure it out. And another thing that I had happened with one of our customers is that they wanted to migrate a whole set of applications to TiDB,
mhm,
and they were like testing the application, then migrating it. And during this whole process, what they accidentally had happened to them was that they migrated one application that wasn't on their list yet, that had been
mhm.
tested. So they by accident migrated the wrong application, and it just worked.
Ooh.
Like, don't
Oh,
do that, but it's
yeah,
still very nice to see that like our
yeah,
compatibility works quite well.
right.
Um, so that was a funny one.
Yeah. Don't count on that happening to don't try that at home, I guess. So that's the
Yes.
message. Cool. All right. So, Nabil, you're actually you mentioned Arun, our colleague Arun earlier. You're our second guest from Dallas, and
Yep.
actually third guest from the state of Texas. And when we had Arun on, I think he talked about what he wanted to share about Dallas was the number of restaurants, and that I still can't believe it. Like there are more restaurants in Dallas than any other cities in the U.S. Plus the Texas State Fair, which is very well renowned. So Nabil, like I want to put you on the spot. Like, is there something about Dallas that you want to share with the audience? Like,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah.
There's a cool tourist attraction, and it's been around for many years. It's called the Dallas. It's really not well known, but it's called the Dallas Pedestrian Network. It's a hidden
Oh.
gem in the city. It's in downtown Dallas. It's like an
Mm-hmm.
underground um, area where you can actually, it's a network of walkways spanning about 36 city blocks in downtown Dallas. And you have the ability, it's like an underground village where there's shops and restaurants and offices, and it's open, pretty much all the time. And it's a nice way to escape the weather and just get underground and being able to,
Right.
hang around with this community. It's pretty cool. And I encourage people, if you ever come to Dallas, look into the Dallas Pedestrian Network. It's
Oh,
available.
cool.
You can connect to it pretty easily from most of the popular spots like Dallas Reunion Tower and other hotels. They have a way to be able to go down there and go out there and try out the area.
Cool.
Maybe have some go to the restaurant or see some of
Right.
the shops and just walk around and tour it.
Right. Wow. I mean, it reminds me of they have a similar underground network in Montreal. I mean, because of the
Yes.
weather, but different weather, right? Because like if you were to go there in November and through like February, you could be going to like minus 20 degrees. So that's why
Yep.
that's things are underground. In Dallas, you have the heat. So to mitigate the heat, that you have things underground, I guess, right?
And actually, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you,
Yeah.
Ray.
No.
Now that you mention it, somebody from Montreal who designed that network in Montreal, the underground network, they're the
Yeah.
ones that team was responsible for developing it in Dallas as well. So
Oh, wow. I didn't
yeah,
realize that. So cool. Yeah, this wasn't even scripted. When you were explaining to me, that reminded me of when I visited Montreal. Like
yeah,
I was trying like food stalls underground. That's really cool. Like
hmm
like it's been a long time since I've been to Dallas. Like I'd never associated downtown Dallas with like a pedestrian area, but now I know. So
yeah.
cool. Well, I mean, thank you, Nabil, for joining us. I mean, I always enjoy like our one-on-one conversation, whether it's in the office or on call. So it was good to have you on. We're glad they finally made it happen. Um, yeah, and then I mean, people that are listening, I just want to do a quick promo of our podcast. Like, if you're watching this on YouTube, it help us tremendously if you subscribe to our channel, or if you're on the podcast platform like Spotify, feel free to add our podcast series to your library. And yeah, we'll be coming up with a lot more episodes in the next few months. And thank you, Daniel. Safe travels, and Nabil, welcome back home. We'll see everyone. We'll talk to you during the next episode.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.